I saw the announcement that Linda's Pantry and Sutton's Days are doing a whole month in April. They're going to have 4 different videos a week showcasing how to use what you can. And that sounds just marvelous. And I thought, hey, I'll make a video and contribute to this. This has been something I've been working on for over a month because I'm only making 1 dish a week. But I wanted to tell you about something marvelous to can. It is potato soup base. And I have a video to that. See? And this contains potatoes and carrots and celery and chicken broth and garlic and a little red pepper. And it's a great base for making potato soup. And that soup tastes great. Of course, you've got to add some cream and a little cheese and thickener to it because you can't can those things. But it makes a great soup. But you know what else? You can use this to make a lot of different dishes. And that's what I want to talk about today. Being creative in the kitchen. And with the dishes I'm going to show you, I'm trying to use as many shelf-stable items as I can. Because then it's great for your prepper pantry recipes, and all you need to do first is can this potato soup base. Okay, something I'm not including, but you easily could. You could just put in some leftover rotisserie chicken or maybe some canned chicken and a little package of noodles, and you've got a great noodle soup. But we're going to make something a little more creative than that. Well, I was watching a video by Iridium242, and he mentioned for your pantry that you can buy these Uncle Ben's sweet and smoky beans in the package. And all you got to do is warm them, or you could even eat them directly from the package. So we bought a couple, but we just don't quite like the flavor. Of course, my husband prefers my homemade baked beans instead. But I don't want these to go to waste. So here's a recipe I came up with that can use this and this. We're going to make some rice and bean stew. So we have our potato soup base, some leftover rice from last night's supper, 1 smoked brat, all cut up in pieces. And then we got that Uncle Ben's sweet and smoky beans. They're already cooked. So I'm going to take some out of the package because, as you can see, expired 1/21, and this is March. So, but I'm going to rinse off a little bit of the sauce before I make the stew. So I've diced up the meat, and I'm going to add a little tomato sauce too. This is my home canned, and I have some left over. So let's make our stew. I have a little oil heating up to give it a little depth. Meat to it. Okay, I'm just going to brown this a bit. And while we do that, I'm just adding a little red pepper flakes. Because you know me, I like my things a little spicy. Okay, we'll be back when this is brown. Won't take long. Putting in a little dehydrated onions too. Oh, it's smelling good. Now I'm just going to put in just a little. Man, that was hot. Now let's put in our soup, or soup base. So that it's all out. And we're going to put in our green beans. Mix this together. Isn't that looking good? And we're just going to let it simmer for maybe 15 minutes or so. Be back when it's ready. So we're reducing the broth a bit, and then we're going to add in Just a little cornstarch. You can ask how much. Oh, I don't know. Less than a tablespoon. And a little water. And then we're going to stir it up so it thickens. And then it's going to be ready to serve. Doesn't that look good? First I put rice in the dish, then I spooned in the stew. And now, very optional, but I like some Parmesan on top. There we go. Now, a little taste test. Got a little meat there. As you can see, the steam's coming off it, so it's pretty hot. Very good. You can feel just the heat a little bit of the cayenne pepper. And of course you might want to put in some Italian spices or something else that you like. But actually the beans have a pretty good flavor in this. Well, there you have it. A very fast meal you can make with your potato soup base and shelf-stable ingredients. So even if there was a power outage, you could cook on your grill or whatever you have and heat this up and have a wonderful filling dinner. I mean, doesn't that look good? And it took only 15 minutes to make. I mean, how great is that? And it is really a filling meal. Next up, use what you got on hand. And I had made some pies and I still had a leftover. Yes, I didn't make it myself. A Pillsbury crust. So I thought, let's use this and make some chicken pot pie. Doesn't that sound good? So for this recipe, we're using a 1 pint jar of potato-based soup, 2 tablespoons butter, 2 tablespoons flour, leftover cooked chicken, a handful of frozen peas. You don't have to put those in. And pre-made pie crust. Of course, you can also make your own. Again, we start out with draining the broth from the jar content. We're going to put our butter in the pan. We're going to add some flour, maybe tablespoon and a half. See how that goes. We want to mix this up a little. Turn down our heat just a little. We're going to keep on stirring this until it browns a bit. So be back when we're ready. A little pepper. And a little salt. Okay, and it's thickening up nice. Now we're going to add back in all the contents of our jar. Mix that up. And then the leftover chicken. Let's mix it up well. And then just a little frozen peas because they always have peas, right? And we're just going to let this warm up while we're cutting out the crust. Now we want to cut it out a little bit more than the actual bowl, and this won't be pretty. But I think you get the idea. So we filled up both of our little bowls here. Now we take the top part here, just coming apart a little, and we're just going to put it in on top. Now they're going to be ready for the oven. Not the most beautiful crust you've ever seen on it, but there you go. chicken pot pie. Okay, it didn't turn out as pretty as I wanted because I couldn't find my ramekins, so I used something else, but you get the idea. I mean, it still tasted great. I mean, it is definitely comfort food in a bowl. Yes, Xander had to make his appearance. Can't go a video without that. Next up, we're gonna make a great Italian soup, and this is what I call a dump soup, because you're just gonna dump all the ingredients in the pot and warm it up, and bingo, you got soup. I mean, how easy is that? So for this soup, we want your potato base. I'm gonna use a little canned beans here, and I'm using some of my canned kale, and some of my canned ham. But you know, the meat is optional. I'm also going to be using some of the juice from my canned ham. And if you don't have that, you may wish to use something like this, which is a ham flavored base, just to give it a little different flavor. And then for spices, we're going to use a little rosemary, sage, thyme, and I probably will put in a little red pepper flakes because I do love a little zip in my soup. I've decided to use just a little bit of tomato paste too. Now this soup is using my canned kale, but you can buy canned greens from the store, or if you're lucky enough to have fresh ones, use those instead. And it's using my home canned ham, but if you don't have that, you can always use a little of this smoked ham that you might have in your pantry. The whole idea behind this is to be as clever as you can using things you have on hand. And maybe you don't have that ham broth like I do in my canned ham. Well, then you might have in your pantry some ham base. That will go great. You can just make up a little. Or something I've done in the past, my husband loves these pork ramen noodles. So there's a little packet in there of pork flavoring, and that can be great in a stew or soup. Okay, first up, let's open our potato base here. Very good. Seal. Pour it in. Now, I'm going to add the broth from this ham. There we go. Now let's open our kale. That one didn't even want to open up, did it? There we go. Okay, we'll just take out a little kale. And about that much kale. The rest, you can have greens for supper. Now I drained my beans, so let's put in some beans. Okay, looking good. I don't know, am I going to want a little bit more kale? Maybe just a smidgen more. There we go. And now for my meat, I've used my fork and put it in little pieces. Looking good. Now we're just going to use a little bit of paste. Yeah, maybe that much. And we're going to want to put in a little of our spices. So here's a little sage. And remember, you can always add more spices when you do your taste test. A little rosemary, which ended up to be more than I wanted. A little thyme. And like I said, what I always like, some red pepper flakes. Now, all we have to do is heat it up. Now you might say, well, there's still leftover beans. What are you going to do with them? Well, you can make up a quick hummus. I have a recipe for that. Still a little ham left. I didn't think we needed all of that. That will go great in an omelet tomorrow morning. And we have quite a bit of kale left, so we can make greens for supper tonight. Now we're just warming it up. Really won't take long. And we'll be back when it's done and do a wonderful taste test. Okay, it's ready. Let's dish it up. Ooh, doesn't that look good? And something I always like to do, put a little Parmesan on top. Okay, now we do our little taste test. Let it cool off a minute. But you'd never know what it started out as, would you? I mean, this looks just so delicious. Mmm. Oh, I didn't get a bean in that one. Oh, this is so good. Got just a little bit of burn from the red pepper. Such a quick soup to make. I'm actually making it up in the morning. It's 7 a.m. and I'm making it to take it to work for lunch today. So how easy is that? A fast Italian soup. I made this soup for lunch and I had it for 2 days, and believe me, it was filling and just tasted fantastic. Okay, so last but definitely not least, because it is my absolute favorite, is to make a cheesy beer chowder. This is fantastic, and you'd never even know it started from only this. Now, the neat thing about this recipe is it's so darn quick and looks like you've been slaving in the kitchen. And it has a kind of a smoky flavor to it with the cheese. I mean, it is really, really good. So these are just stuff I have on hand that I'm going to use. Of course, I'm draining the potato base right now. And then I have some canned bacon, from 2019. So it's almost 2 years old. I'm going to use some of that. I have some leftover corn. I'm not going to use all of it, but some of it. I've had this Gouda cheese for a long time, and I'm going to grate some of that up. I usually put this on top of my French onion soup, which I can, which I'll put a little link there for you. And I'm using some of this whipping cream. No, you're supposed to be using cream, like heavy cream. This is even heavier, right? But it is what I have on hand. But if you don't have whipping cream or heavy cream, just remember you can use 2 parts milk with 1 part melted butter, whisk it together, and you have got the fat content of cream. Get about 1.5 tablespoons of flour here. And back here, it's my bacon grease. We'll use some of that. We got salt and pepper. And because this is a cheesy beer chowder, what I drink, Bud Light. Let's get started. Oh, one more thing. You might say, what are these? These are fried shallots. I just thought these might be good to crisp on top. We'll see how it tastes in the soup. Now, if you don't have any leftover corn, don't worry. Use some of your dehydrated corn or some of your frozen corn. And like I said, if you don't have any heavy cream, again, don't worry about it. Just use 2 parts milk to 1 part melted butter. Whisk it together, and you've got cream for this recipe. And maybe you don't have your own home canned bacon. Well, you should, but if you don't, just save some from your morning's breakfast, or you can actually buy it in those little packages for a lot of money, right? And just use that bacon. Or you could use ham too, but bacon gives it such a great flavor. Okay, we're just melting up some of this bacon fat. Oh, not quite a tablespoonful, I don't think. And then we're going to add maybe about a tablespoon and a half of flour, maybe less. Exact amounts don't matter for something like this. Now we're just going to keep kind of whisking it around until it browns a bit. You really don't want to leave it alone very long at all because it burns fast. Be back when it's ready. That's good enough. We're not going for a dark roux here, so that will suffice. Now we're going to add our juice from the potato base. And about 1/3 cup of that beer. And mix this up. Hear that sizzle. I'm just going to let this thicken just a little. And I'm going to put back in the rest of the soup. Already looking really good, isn't it? Now we're going to just put some of our bacon bits in here. Stir them around. Put our cheese in. And you can use whatever cheese you have. You know, it'd be fine with cheddar cheese too. Okay. Want to melt that cheese. And we're going to put in about a 1/4 cup of that heavy cream. Mix it in well. Now I'm adding just a little of the corn juice. Give it a little flavor. And then yes, I did this with my fingers. It's for my family, okay? Don't judge. This boiling will take care of any of the germs. Add a little pepper in. This is seasoned pepper. A little salt. Put that in. Looking good. Turn down the heat a little. Take a little taste test, see how it tastes. Oh, this is good. And that's it. It's done. Dish it up. So we're just going to add some more of our little bacon bits to it. Top. Right. And maybe just a little of these crunchy onions. Doesn't that look delicious? And since it's for me, I need a little bit more pepper. I love seasoned pepper. So wasn't that incredibly easy? Let's just have a little. This is so good. Crunchy onion on top is good too. And look at how fast you can make cheesy beer corn chowder for your family. Or you can keep it all to yourself. Bon appetit. Oh yeah, and you're gonna have plenty of leftover beer here. So that's your beverage with the soup. It's the spot. Well, that's it. I've showed you 4 different ways, well 5 if we count the chicken noodle soup, how you can use this potato soup base. I really recommend canning it. Check out my video, and I would love to hear down below, have you made this? What creative dish do you make with it? Thank you.